Yeah, you thought you'd got rid of us. Hello again, Just for Farmers, with me, David Heiner, and Paul the Legend Harris. Hi, Paul.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening.
Bienvenue, comment est-ce?
Très bien, merci.
I was mixing my languages there.
Very good.
But what we thought we'd do is just give you a little overview of most of the people who have been on the show as guest experts. I mean, obviously there was James Bacon, who was on all of them with the health and fitness and well-being tips that so many of you have said that you've enjoyed. But let's go back to the very first person we had on board, Paul, and just very quickly, if we each give just one little thing from each person that we took as one of the big takeaways. So Amy Rawlinson was talking about purpose. What did you take from Amy?
Yeah, I talked about behind the purpose, once you've worked out sort of why you're here, is why you need to achieve that purpose. You know, the power of your why. She gave this phrase, and I pick up my glasses. She said it was the emotional significance you assign to your purpose. So it's got to mean something to you. That's fundamentally what I took away. Purpose isn't just, I've got to do this because, or I should do this. It's, I really want to do this. That's what I took away from
Yeah, I took the purpose is the guide for your life, almost like the compass.
Yes.
And as you said, the why is the emotion behind it that makes you do it. I loved that. It was really quite a deep dive in session one, but
Yes,
it was good.
Yeah, well, purpose is always a big subject, isn't it? It feels a bit deep and a bit fluffy, maybe for some people. But actually, if you don't know why you're doing something, why are you doing it? Exactly.
Then we had the ever impressive world record holder, endurance athlete, and overcoming addiction dude, Andy Stone. And at the time, as we're recording this little thing here, he's in the middle of the English Channel, and the Channel swim is just a training swim for building up to swim the Atlantic. Mad as a fish.
Absolutely bonkers.
But wow, what a session he did with us, talking such brutal honesty about his challenges, his addictions, and how he's used endurance sport to overcome them. And for me, it was about having that coach in your corner, the one that makes you get out of bed at 5 a.m. to go and start the training run, the one that you can share everything with. What was your biggest takeaway from Andy?
Similar, because he talked, didn't he, a lot about motivation and how you get motivated, and he talked very candidly and openly about his own challenges with addiction and how in a lot of those models they have a level of accountability. So it was the word accountability that really struck for me. That like a training buddy, or if you're going into Alcoholics Anonymous or Gamblers Anonymous, it's you're going every week. You know you're going to have to speak about how you're feeling, and he talked about when you're trying to achieve something major, have an accountability buddy or accountability group. And we know that within farming, lots of us attend discussion groups and we meet with the fellow farmers, and the power of then someone holding you to account. He talked about it in his training, didn't he? As you say, sometimes if you're going to the gym every morning and you've got to just motivate yourself, if you know you're meeting somebody there or somebody else is going with you, sometimes that can help. And that as a metaphor can go right into business as well. Who are our accountability buddies in business?
And not feeling awkward about asking for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And reaching out to the right person who's good. That was great. Then we had Doug Dorbury, who's a small business consultant, and he was talking to us about administration. What I loved about Doug's session was how he made everything that I'm terrified of sound so. Actually, I could do that. I could do that. So he made it non-scary.
Yeah, and he talked about things like admin, which most of us dislike, if we're honest. I mean, there are a few people, and if you're listening in, I love admin. Oh, I'm very envious. But a lot of us don't like admin. And he talked about breaking things down into bite-sized chunks, having a system, having an in tray and an out tray, and just starting with that, get your paperwork in. This has got to be dealt with. This has been dealt with and it's for filing. So he made it simple. It wasn't about, there's lots of complex systems. There are great software systems out there. But I love the fact that Doug said, just start with an in tray and an out tray. That's a good place to start.
Bit of Lego, some chewing gum and a crayon.
Yeah, exactly. And when I think about some farming offices I go into, and there's just piles of paper, he said that's the thing to attack first, wasn't it? Is get your paperwork sorted.
Next up, we had a subject that some farmers might think, oh, not relevant to me, which was negotiation with Derek Arden, a world-renowned negotiation expert. And Derek, what I liked about was his authenticity. He says it's not about beating the person, it's about having a win-win. and knowing what your walk away price is, so that you either A, walk away, you haven't lost anything, but you don't feel as though you've been on the wrong end of the negotiation, and likewise for your client.
And I like the way he talked about, which again might be almost counterintuitive in certainly 1980s versions of negotiations. He said, build a relationship, whether you're a buyer or a seller, make an effort to build a relationship with the other person, be interested in them. And he said, 100 times out of 100, that gets you a better result than trying to keep distance between you and the person you're negotiating with. So that was quite refreshing, I thought.
I like that. It's not hard, is it, guys? It's not hard.
No,
it's not hard. So, then we had Ricky Arundel, who talked about gender, transgender, identity, sexual orientation, and how and why is that relevant in the farming community. And it is such a scary subject, especially if you're a white, late, middle-aged bloke like us. It's a scary subject, and we ought to be open about the fact that it's a difficult subject. And whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. What is true is that it's coming.
And I think it's interesting. It's not hard, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
This probably is one of those areas that is quite tricky for many people. Is, again, once we don't know what we don't know, how do we deal with somebody who comes onto farm one day and says, I want to now be known as a different gender than I was before. Now, what we do know, and what, again, Ricky talked us through a little bit, there is laws. So there are new laws now where we have to accept that people are allowed to do that, and we can't just say, I'm not doing that. I'm just, he was always Bob, so I'm not calling him Bobby now. We have to be aware of that. And I think what you talked about, I think that fear was the thing that Ricky talked about, fear of not knowing how to handle it almost.
Yeah, Ricky said one thing that stuck in my head, which is just because we don't understand something doesn't mean we should fear it. And when we asked her, how do you overcome that fear? She went, talking. Just have conversations and listen with an open mind. And, we then realised that people of difference ain't that different to us, and ain't that scary.
It was very powerful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because he talked about when you just have a conversation with somebody, and it doesn't have to be gender diversity, it can be racial diversity, it can be societal diversity where we are.
True.
When we just talk to each other and understand. I remember in 2024 where we are now, we had some quite difficult periods of rioting, and I heard somebody talk about a Muslim community leader just went and talked to the rioters.
Yes.
You think, gosh, that's brave. But actually, in talking, they discovered that they had similar concerns about society and the future and their own families and health and things like that. So whether it's gender diversity, racial diversity, Ricky's main message was don't be scared, go and talk.
Where it was wonderful. And you know what, this makes me realise actually just what an abundance of information and content there is in this podcast. The subjects we've covered. So varied. Next up, we had Jules Morgan, world-renowned marine design engineer, powerboat racing champion, and Jules became an expert on sustainability and what was the other word? I can't remember the other word, but it was predominantly sustainability and innovation. In season 1, he spoke to us about innovation. In this one, he talked to us about sustainability. And Jules always talks about how when it's done well, by that I mean sustainability, it leads to growth. Mm-hmm. Whereas most people just see it as a cost, a needless hassle. But sustainability done well can lead to growth. What was your biggest takeaway from Jules?
Mine from Jules, and he's a bit of a genius. Fantastic. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back. He'll give you loads of fascinating information. Bear with it, 'cause it's quite a long one, I think. But what he really talked about was thinking outside the box. That even if it's sustainability, we talk about sustainability, and he is perhaps, of all the people we've interviewed, the most out of the box thinker that we have. And when you're looking at something like sustainability, we often think of existing paradigms, whether that's the way that what we put onto the soil, how we're dealing with the soil. He gave this wonderful example about everyone talks about wind power being the answer. We need wind power. But he but what we don't talk about is it needs a huge diesel engine to start the blades. So his view is we need to look at that as well. So we go way beyond what we sometimes see as the first thing. There's a metaphor for us a lot in business to solutions to our problems. We sometimes need to go beyond that first thought and more out of the box thinking. Fascinating chap.
And he has this wonderful quote, because whilst he does think outside the box, being an engineer, he often winks at me with a wry smile. But remember, Dave, there's such a thing as physics. You can't think outside of a box, because a box what you do is get inside the box and push the sides out. And you know what? Simple, but great quote.
Fascinating.
Then Nigel Vardy, world record breaking disabled mountaineer and engineer. What a geezer.
I wasn't there for that one, was I, Dave? I missed that one.
No,
so tell us about what the juicy bits.
Should have been there, Paul.
I know.
It was really good.
Missed that one. What was Nigel talking about then?
So much. It's worth listening to his story. Please go back and listen to the story of how he fell off Mount McKinley, lost lots of appendages to frostbite, nearly died with hypothermia, and then went on to break mountain climbing records. But it's not his achievement I want you to listen to it for. I want you to listen to it and watch it just to see how pragmatic his thinking had to be to overcome the challenges that he was facing and does face. Very pragmatic decision maker. He says you keep making decisions or you die on a mountain. And most people in life procrastinate over decision making and then wonder why nothing gets done.
Did he talk about difficult decisions or difficult conversations that sometimes you need to have and being pragmatic about that?
He did. He talked about it in terms of resolving to do something. So make a decision to do something and resolve to the fact that you're going to do it, rather than say I'll try.
Because I think that's very applicable, again, in our industry, when we sometimes need to make a difficult decision. It could be about a person, it could be about an animal, it could be even about a piece of machinery that we finally need to sell or let go. And that can be very difficult. But being pragmatic, I think that's the word I'm taking from what you're saying, can sometimes help you to progress through that process rather than getting too emotionally entangled with it.
Indeed. Then, my little chickens, we had Frederica Roberts, who was a PhD doctor in happiness. And what did you take from Fred's talk?
She threw a lot of science at us, didn't she, about happiness? And she was talking a lot about thoughts and how if we get positive thoughts, that impacts on us in different ways. So she was very much about change your thoughts, change your habits. What did she say? Thoughts? Feelings, thoughts,
feelings, behaviours.
That was it, yeah. So very much the connection between our thoughts and happiness, that we can actually think ourselves happy as opposed to just hoping happiness comes to us. And it was 100 miles an hour, wasn't it? There was a lot of information.
A lot of content there. Brilliant. Go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
I took how important sleep is and the impact it has on our happiness.
Yeah.
The neuro imbalances and chemicals that are changed when we sleep deprived, and the critical nature of a good night's and quality sleep is.
And if you're listening to this right now and you've been doing 12 hours on a tractor and you're feeling tired, don't be surprised if you're feeling a bit low or miserable, because that's what she was saying about the importance. It's well documented, the importance of sleep, which is something sometimes we struggle with in agriculture.
And how most things don't turn out as bad as we catastrophise them to be. How often have the things we've most worried about and catastrophised about happened in a badder way as we feared they would? Not many. So get a grip of that catastrophised thinking. Catastrophised thinking, is that a thing?
It's a good word though, Dave. I think we'll
go
with that.
Yeah, it is now. Then we had Helen Wyatt. What did you say from Helen?
Well, Helen's building in agriculture, sort of a mentoring service, the importance of, again, it links in a lot of other things, other sessions that we've had, the importance of having someone to talk to, having someone to bounce ideas off, to think outside the box with maybe, to maybe hold us accountable. So she was very much talking about that. And we also talked a little bit about the importance of having these conversations when it relates to succession planning and starting some of these conversations. Often mentoring can be somebody older to somebody younger, but it doesn't have to be. There's not always this association that it has to be an older person who's mentoring you. Sometimes young people can mentor us as well.
It's true.
And the work that you do with a lot of young people. You have mentors, don't you, that are young mentors?
Absolutely.
So that was the whole. What did you take out of Helen's?
I took from her and from you, because you were both agreeing with each other on the subject, which is in the farming industry, a lot of you are at some level already doing this.
Yes,
You know, when you take on a new hand, you typically put them with someone, a wise head, to guide them and teach them. All we need to do is ramp that up a bit. You're already doing it, just do it better and bigger.
Yeah.
And for the last one for this session was Jules Mitchell.
Another Jules. Yeah.
Another Jules.
Not a Julie.
Not a Julie. Definitely not Julie. Definitely not in a box. She doesn't want to be boxed. So we talked about happiness, but in a very different way to how we did with Frederica.
Yeah.
What did you take from Jules?
Again, I think Jules' speciality, she talked about what she refers to as the mental wealth revolution, and how often we talk mental health is associated with poor mental health. We don't talk about it as a positive particularly.
True.
And she's trying to change it from I'm in a poor mental state, therefore I need something to fix me, to actually going, I don't need fixing, I need understanding. And what her work is all about, helping you understand what's going on in the brain body system. And she gave us a little tip, didn't she? She talked particularly about, we talked a lot about loneliness, didn't we, in her session?
Yes.
And she was talking about one of the ways is to talk to somebody, you know, and that might sound a bit cliched or even a bit trite. Oh, just go and talk to somebody. But actually, she was giving us the science of what she called walking and talking, and having someone you can talk to, and using technology, using WhatsApp messages. You haven't got to physically pick up the phone. You might think, I don't really want to talk to Dave today, but I can leave him a message, and then you can listen to that message and come back to me in your own time. And she was talking about this walking and talking, wasn't she, as a way of not feeling as lonely, particularly.
I really took a lot from that, and I was surprised. I don't mean this in a rude way, but I was surprised how much I did take from it. I think there's a lot there, if people listen back to that they can apply, that will just make you a little bit more chipper, my little chickens. Chipper chickens.
Chipping chickens.
Chipper
Yeah.
chickens.
Is that something you get in KFC?
Chicken and chips. That's chicken and chips, or chicken in a basket. So Paul, what if you could sum up in one sentence the kind of season we've had here on Just for Farmers? I mean, what would you say out of all of that gold? What would be your one biggest takeaway?
Ooh, 3 or 4 good questions there, Dave. And I think, so what's the gold that we've heard? It's the variety, the expanse of thinking, the different tools that we can put our hands on to help us to cope with life, to cope with our businesses, the different perspectives you can take, whether it's from how do I get through a problem or how do I create a new opportunity. There is just so much juice, and so many people out there that have got great skills that we can tap into. I do think sometimes within our agricultural environment, we can be quite echo chambery. We can listen to each other. I think what's been great about this season is we've had lots of people from outside of agriculture giving us a perspective that we can use inside agriculture.
Yes, very true.
And I think the importance of understanding our mental well-being, or our mental wealth, as Jules Mitchell would say, I think shone through in a lot of the sessions that we went, you know, maybe it's all, some of it's in our head, or as Jules would say, in our head and our bodies, that we need to take care of, as well as taking care of the cows and the grass and the machinery and maybe the staff. Maybe my biggest takeaway, take care of yourself.
For me, I think that's wonderful. I don't think I can say much more to that, other than to say there's so much help out there, guys. So much help out there. All you've got to do is reach out and get it.
There's a song there somewhere.
Yeah.
Reach out and touch. Been great, though, hasn't it?
Paul, it's been, what a great season. Thank you very much for your
season.
time and expertise.
Ditto, Dave, been great.
All respect to the NIAB and their sponsors for making this podcast happen. And if you'd like more, please let them know and we'll see what we can do. Failing that, you never know. Maybe one day see one another Just for Farmers.
Take care.